Welcome to Burnt Out. The Burnt Out podcast shares the stories of firefighters, emergency personnel, and other first responders around the world to create a pathway to save lives. The stories you will hear are real and may be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. And now I'd like to introduce you to your hosts for Burnt Out, Skip O and Jeff the Old Guy.
Sean, thank you for that introduction, and I'd like to thank our sponsors that are sponsoring the show, making it happen. And I'd also like to thank our guests, Melissa and the old guy, Just Jeff. Hey, Jeff, where can everybody see the sponsors at?
That's a great question. I got the answer. Go to www.burnoutpodcast.org, or you can go to worldwidepeersupport.org and check out our sponsors for this cast.
Thank you, Jeff. That was very well said. Well, we got a guest on here, a young guest from down south. Her name's Melissa. Melissa, could you give us a short bio, what department you're from, what inspired you to get on the department, and then we'll go into some questions. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great, Skip. First off, hello, everybody. Just Jeff.
Hey.
Thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. My name is Melissa Hutto. I'm with Dekalb Fire down south out of Atlanta, Georgia. I've been with them for about 4 years now. Currently serve at our Hazmat station, and I'm on our peer support team. I've been with peer support for about 2 years now. Really been enjoying it. I work a lot with our personal EMS and our firefighters on the ground. As far as that, getting into fire, always wanted to be a firefighter since I was 3 years old. Fire truck showed up at my house, got to sit in the front seat, put a helmet on, and I fell in love with it. So here I am today pursuing that dream and still helping people outside of work too, in other words, with those calls and stuff. So I'm excited to talk more with you guys about it as we continue this podcast.
Well, Melissa, again, welcome to the show, and we appreciate you coming on here. You know, we get a lot of firefighters. Some of them are some old guys or seasoned ladies. We're grateful that you come on here. You're a young person, you're a young firefighter, but from just the short time to talk to you, your wisdom goes a lot further than what your age is. So we appreciate you coming on. As far as your department, who got you involved in peer support? What kind of training have you had?
Well, that's a great question. So Chuck Bray, who's also my captain down there, Captain Bray, got me involved. I met him probably 3 or 4 months in to my start at Dekalb, and he had asked me about potentially being on peer support, and I told him I was all in for it. So fast forward a little bit, and we both went to the same training class a couple months in after that, beginning of the next year, in 2021 or so. And we both loved it. It was a fantastic class put on by our state. Since then, we've been very active in our department, being better and more proactive at a mobilized unit in case something does happen, where we can put people out there right away for, firefighters on the ground, even if we're on shift or not on shift. So that training helped us with different things like that, whether it was a group setting, for a line of duty death, or just for an individual person that might be struggling with that call, but the rest of the crew is okay.
So when you're talking to people, do you I know you have firefighter EMS at your department. Which one do you gravitate toward, or which one do you seem to be talking to more?
Lately, it's been EMS on our side. Our EMS is signed up to run priority ones, and our priority ones fall under death, dismemberment, and destruction, just to be honest. And so they're running 6 cardiac arrests back to back. Some are traumatic, some are from chronic health conditions over time and so on. And then they're also running things that involve just, whether it's shootings or stabbings and stuff too. But they're also continuing with that call, going with them to the hospital and so on. So as soon as they leave the hospital, they're going right back into something that is just as triggering or traumatic from the previous call.
Do they work 24-hour shifts, or is it 12?
They're on that California time, so 12 to 13.
Oof.
Just a guesstimate, how many runs your medic usually runs on a day-by-day basis?
The EMS department, personally?
Yes.
Probably between 12 and 15, like 1 call an hour, unless they're sitting on the wall due to the hospitals being backed up.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I forgot about those joyful hours. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Parked on a wall. I love it. So do you all automatically go out in your priority one calls and talk to your people, or you wait till somebody calls you and say, hey, I'm kind of jammed up here?
That's a great question. So typically we wait till someone calls us because we don't always go on that same call, right? So for a larger department, we have 26 stations right now. And as you know, they're not all single houses. Some are your truck companies and so on. So with that, if it's on the south side of our county, I might have the priority ones that are happening down there, and we may not be as priority 3 or 4, which is a little lower than that on our side. And I might not hear about it till the next day of what they ran or something. So our chief of our EMS department over there will call one of us, whether it's me or a captain on the team or so on. And then they'll give us the information and we'll contact that person, whether that's us meeting with them in person or we just call them on the phone, text them to see how they're doing and if they want to talk further. Or we'll go in on their shift on our off day and meet with them there at the department. That way everyone's on the same work schedule that day and it's easier to meet up.
This is relatively new from understanding. So how are you dealing with the stigmatism that has developed with this? With the old guys, the skip guys and I. We don't need this. I've been doing this for years. It hasn't bothered me. I'm fine.
Well, so here's the funny thing. So being very new in the department, I haven't seen a lot of that until I went to one of our retirees meeting where Chuck has really taken a massive, plate upon himself to really serve those people because he cares about everyone in our department and he'd give the shirt off his back, as I know you guys would too. It's just, I'm there and I'm seeing him 24/7 with that, or every third day. And so when I went to one of these meetings, I didn't realize that so many of our former personnel are coming to these meetings. In other words, saying that they're struggling with calls they never thought they would have struggled with ever. They were mowing their lawn and one of the blades got clogged from grass or something, right? And they flip over and, a flashback happens just from something as simple as that. So I didn't realize that there was a lot of need there for still community and group talk. In other words, that they miss that brotherhood. They're not arriving there every third day. They've lost contact with some of their brothers and not being able to sit down at the kitchen table and have a dinner and laugh about things and cope with a dark sense of humor that we all have after a while. I didn't really know that they were struggling with that. So to see that was very eye-opening. And now being more involved in it and seeing captains that I have that are retiring in 4 years that are all saying, oh yeah, we'll be fine. Don't need to talk about anything. I'm kind of looking at that now like, are you sure? And I'm not questioning them right away, right? But I'm thinking, they might reach out in a couple years, because maybe they live 3 hours away. Maybe they're not able to be as close in contact with everybody like they used to be, because this is our life. This is where we eat, sleep, and breathe for 24 hours. That's our second family. And now that's going to be potentially taken away.
Now, Melissa, with the people of retirement, do you and Chuck, do you guys do do you call them, check on them, emails or letters, whatever their language is? Do you guys try to do any of that yet?
As far as I know, yes. So with Captain Bray taking that head on personally, and then one of also our chaplains on our team follows up with that, they do call and check in on them. I do know that. As far as letters and some other stuff, I'm not aware of yet. I just know that as far as personal responsibility kind of, delved out to different members. Lenny is his name, our chaplain, or one of our chaplains, and Captain Bray usually handled that side. But I do know they check in on them.
Okay, I was just curious. I know we try to do that. We're real informal. We're doing that. I'm fortunate on our department. I can check and talk to the guys. They reach out to me. Just to let everybody know, too, we're bringing on Melissa and Chuck on the podcast to help out. But Chuck mentioned something about an educational podcast for retirees and different other things. So be looking forward to that later on in some of our episodes. But back to you, Melissa. Who do you get, like when you run into your thing? I know you have Chuck, but what do you do for yourself? I mean, like if you run into a problem or a scene or something happens, what kind of help do you ask for?
So for personal, if it's something that triggers me or I'm having a hard time with it, I have reached out in the past to what our department provides, which is like 6 free counseling sessions for everybody. So I reached out to them. Mine had to deal with a plane crash. It was my first one I experienced, and the family that was there watched it happen. I was on scene shuttling in water to help with putting the fire out, and then also part of collecting the rest of the evidence for, whoever needed that at the time, FEMA, our FBI and so on at the airport that this happened at. So I called EAP probably like a week later, and I didn't talk with anybody about it on my crew. I didn't have the best experience personally because, in my opinion, as fantastic as that service is, our EAP are not trained in traumatic first responder events. So the people I'm talking with are trained for your relationships and things on the civilian side of like your daily life. If I go to the grocery store and run into someone and I have a fight with them, or I have a fight with my husband or my wife and so on, right? But as far as seeing the things that we see out in the field, they haven't had experience there. So it's not that they didn't help. They definitely gave me a different perspective on some things. But I found that talking with my crew members, which is what I do proactively now, especially with having Captain Bray personally at my station, talking with them about something that bothers me right away has been the best thing for me personally. So I do have a therapist outside of here, like outside of the county and the department, that I can go to and talk with as well. And then I live with another firefighter and then my best friend. And so that's my other family away from there, right? That's my first family here at home. And so they're also there for me if I really do need to talk with them. Good. Knowing that it may be secondhand trauma, but they're right there for me regardless. So
you got a nice little network set up there.
Jeff, I told you she's wise. I told you.
Yeah. Tell us about some of the training you've got. I know you recently got some peer support type training. Let's dwell into that a little bit. Tell us what you did, what you learned.
Okay, so at the peer support, it was a week-long course, right? And the first day was, as they kind of called, peeling off the Band-Aid. And it was everyone that was there, whether it was dispatch, EMS, fire, police. Just imagine about 50 people in a room and everyone shared their story. So the day was decently heavy after about 8 hours of listening to everyone's personal story, from why they got into the business to the calls they've run and to why they want to serve on the peer support team. Kind of just covering those three areas. And from there, we learned how to take what we all heard and find people that had similar situations to us or experienced similar emotions and figure out like a way to organize a group, like a crew or you're part of your patrol unit or so on that was on scene and may go through that thing. So we kind of took it from there and how to pick out the people individually that had issues and might need to be separated from the group before they could come back in and participate because it was just such a high trigger for them.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And that's hard to do because, you're trying to serve everyone there at the group, right? But then you've got another person that's so bothered by it in a different way that they need that one-on-one attention right then before they can be in that group setting. So figuring that out and, having some basic questions, and I remember some sheets that we had. Maybe you could think of like an iceberg, right? And you only see the tip of it, but everything underneath the water, right? Is that anger? You feel bad. You feel like maybe you caused the death on the scene, but it wasn't your fault. Emotions that you're carrying and hiding beneath that 3 other people in your crew might be going through, but no one's talking about it. So how do we now pull that out of people too that are not talking about it? Because every day when you walk in, or every third day when you see your family, you're going to know if they're different. If Johnny's coming in and doing cartwheels every morning and offering everyone donuts and all of a sudden doesn't do that for 2 weeks straight, something's probably going on.
Sure.
So it was also figuring out people's body language, learning to read that as well for people that you don't know, which can be kind of hard at times too. So, but it was great training overall. I would say we learned a lot. And then also just knowing that we still have our state peer support team to rely on in case something major does happen where we have to pull, an entire battalion out and really talk to everybody.
When you say a state certified course, now I know the IAFF, they brought a course to us, a union, and we did it through there. Is that different from what they give, the international?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I just know from, I may have that on the bottom of my certification on who they went through, because I do know our state support team was certified through a different organization, how they got their organizations and then their regions and everything. But as far as with that, I'm not positive.
A lot of them are similar too. The classes, peer support. I know when it comes to first responders, you see a lot of different treatment centers come out now, want to help first responders with PTSD or whatever thing. And Jeff and you probably vetted some treatment centers too, Melissa, or investigated them on. They look good on the website. They really look good. I know we have the Center of Excellence for us, which I went through 4 years ago. and Jeff, I'm going to throw it, Jeff went through. I tell you, they do a great job. We ran into a problem last week, and not a problem, but where the Center of Excellence was full. They couldn't get this guy I was working with for 2 weeks. So we found him a place out in California, and we flew him there. It's called Throttle and Thrive. And that was a 6-bed facility, males only, because they're crowded. They're trying to do the females too, just so they can separate the two. But I will always try to get our fellow firefighter, but sometimes when we help, it's first responders it's a military person, it's a police officer, it's whatever. And it's good to use other facilities. As far as being in Atlanta, Georgia, do you have any facilities that you guys utilize other than Center of Excellence if they're full, or you need somebody that don't want to go there, wants to go somewhere else?
With being young in the department and on the peer support team as well, I have not had to send anybody off yet as far as to a facility of some sort for further help, with what they're going through.
Sure.
We do use Center of Excellence. I do know that. But as far as others, we haven't had to branch out. So there are 2 other people on our team that actually specialize in that, with those like having different resources for rehabilitation facilities and so on. And I'm not sure what those are, but I do know that we have those available for anyone who needs to go to them right away.
Sure. Well, it just sometimes it's good to have all the tools and stuff. And that's what I try to do. I listen to everybody. I don't care if it's a small department, a big department, if they're using a treatment facility, are they using EMDR, brain spotting, what kind of things, new things I can learn, not just for myself, but also to pass on to our brothers and sisters, first responders. Being young as you are, is there some things that kind of sparked your curiosity when you're reading about treatments or different other things that you've learned about that you might let us old guys know about?
So I don't know about reading. I do a good bit of research on articles just in general, and I'll even talk with some people close to me too, especially like my fire family here, like at my own house with the other firefighter I live with and my best friend. They're very resourceful. The firefighter I live with, he's been in fire for over 10 years. So he's got some resources too, and in separate counties. So I've talked with him about, does your county have a peer support, and what does that look like, and how is the structure set up? And I've met with one of his chiefs and so on and tried to get an idea for their team, because sometimes it's very helpful to pull in outside resources versus inside, because so many people might be involved, right? So I've done some research on that, on what outside help looks like, whether that's mutual aid or just calling even out of state, for instance. And I think that that's been helpful, as we may have to use that at some point. So go ahead and establish those connections. As far as some new stuff, I would say, in my opinion, what's new to me is light therapy, which I don't know if you guys have heard of it. We're trying to bring someone on currently to our board right now who specializes in that. And it's supposed to be, and they can be set up in any way, like in a circle board, right? Or like in a straight line. And you're supposed to go through the memory or the flashback that is bothering you the most. And they put these lights in like signals, right? Or patterns, however it's set up. And they say that the studies that have been done from this and what I've researched have been astronomical in improvement with that person's behavior at home, in their place of work, as far as health-wise. Like mentally, they improved from this, 70% plus immediately, because they were able to go through this. They say something about the light therapy, the way it triggers the brain, helps kind of reconstruct some of the pathways in there for more of a positive light the next time something happens or triggers that flashback. And it's not just a one-time thing. I know that they go through it a couple of times, but the first time is mainly talking about the trigger and the flashback. And then from there, it's getting better and better. And now what's triggering, can we talk about just the triggers, or can we talk about what it's bringing up? And let's talk about that. So that's the newest form I've heard and I've seen of this person that we're trying to bring on board. In other words, introducing that at least to our department. And I haven't been through it, so I don't know everything about it fully, but it sounds very promising and like it could really help a couple of people.
I like that idea. Honestly, I do. The hardest thing I see about that, just over this little conversation we're having now, is getting that individual to pull that flashback, pull that traumatic event forward and be able to talk about it. That, to me, has got to be huge. That has to be a huge step for that individual. I don't even know if I could do that.
I think so too. I'm not sure if that's something, to be honest with you, if that's like a last thing that you would do, it's like we've tried this and we've tried that and they're willing to go to this, or if that's something we might lead off with if they're willing to right away.
Us old guys, we're masters at disguising this stuff and storing it away for years and not letting it bother us. Everybody sees us cross the street. Oh, he's just a happy guy, but we're boiling out inside, It's the truth. So to sit me down and tell me to stare at these lights and tell you about one of my traumatic events, I don't think I could do that. I don't really think I would want to. I don't know.
I know for me though, and a lot of other people, when you get to that point and you're sitting there with somebody, you're reaching out for help. You're in that seat. And for me, I'm more willing, especially as somebody as a peer support set that up for me. Because if they set it up and they shared some of their struggles, that's going to open the door more for me to walk through that and try that. To me, it sounds like EMDR and brain spotting. It's another method using the light therapy to open those things so they can line up. So you don't feel that stress when you think about that or those triggers. That's just my quick thing, but I have never heard of that until you said that. So see, you're teaching people, you're teaching two old guys that, because I'll go look at it. I just don't say I'm going to do it. I go look at it. And I try things. I did a hypnotherapy. We had a guest on here. He does I just did one of those Friday just to try it out. Now I sit down with him and it relaxed me. I felt better afterwards. And you just got to figure out what's in your budget. When it comes to life and death, or, I was telling everybody, here I am when I'm worried about money now since I sobered up, but I wasn't when I was buying an 8-ball of cocaine or drinking Jack Daniels or nothing. Then I sober up. Oh, how much is that going to cost me? Of course, my bill's in an array. I'm about broke. But then I go, well, how much is that going to cost me? I don't know. It's going to cost you your old life. You're going to feel better, and you're not going to be stressed. You're not going to think about killing yourself. You're not going to be drinking. That's what it's going to cost you. So when you get somebody like that, Melissa, tells you that, say it's going to cost you your old life. That's all it's going to do.
I'm right there with you.
I get passionate a little bit. Sorry.
No, that's fantastic.
That was awesome. Yeah, I like that. I'm glad it's recorded. I'll play it back.
Well, I think with all, come together, Atlanta, Georgia, I meant to ask this earlier, how many calls as a whole department do you think, and you can throw a guesstimate, because do you have a year, do you think?
Well over 250,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a hell of an area down there. A lot of violence, a lot of bad stuff in Atlanta.
There is. Surprisingly, it's funny you say that. We have had people that wanted to come be a cop, right, or a firefighter in Dekalb because they thought Atlanta was worse. They wind up leaving Dekalb and going back to Atlanta because Dekalb is worse than Atlanta, even though, we border them right there. But traffic-wise, my territory personally is Spaghetti Junction over there, which is a very major trafficked airway in general, area in general, just because of the amount of cars coming through there. So to get to Atlanta for work, I have 2 to 3 million commuters a day that come through my territory. So accidents I see all the time, even if it's just a fender bender. But Dekalb is just a busy area in general as far as, unfortunately, violence and everything. That is very, I'm used to hearing it every 2 minutes on dispatch. So
yeah, sure. Yeah, I've heard some wicked stories. I don't know if they compared to Washington, D.C., but nonetheless, they're wicked stories.
Yeah. Hey, Melissa, is there somebody you want to give a shout out on here right now? Is there anything, a shout out or an organization or anything that you want to just recognize them?
I would love to give a shout out to Next Rung. They're an organization that I tried at one point, and I really appreciated being able just to talk with another firefighter that was out of the state or out of the city that I was in, just to be able to connect with someone that sees the same things in a different county, runs the same calls as me, just with a different crew. In other words, just knowing that there's another female or another male out there that I can talk to that understands my point of view or something, right? And can connect just basically on that level. So Next Rung has been a great organization that I've given people that as a resource to utilize, because they may want to just have a texting pen pal, or that phone call here and there. And they've been fantastic with that.
That's good. I tell you, another one we support too is Worldwide Peer Support. We do 3 support Zoom meetings, plus they got a number you can use. worldwidepeersupport.org. Go on them. Well, I think Next Rung's on our partners too on the page if you go there. So whoever you call, just get a hold of somebody and don't hold that pain in. Well, let's say you got somebody out there. Now, it could be a young firefighter, police officer, a military person. They could be sitting by themselves or in a crowded room feeling alone, and they don't know which direction to go. And they need help. They need guidance. You got 30 seconds to share something with them. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? Go.
I would tell them, knowing that I've been that person before, don't suppress it anymore. Talk to the person that you've been wanting to talk to on your mind that you don't think will listen or is going to be judgmental to you. Just forget everything that the two of you have been through and talk to that person. It is totally worth the conversation.
I'm going to caveat on that. What is the one thing you would tell that same person not to do?
I wouldn't want them to isolate, like to suppress and isolate, in other words, because it just leads us to a greater pathway in our head of just a downward spiral.
That's good stuff. Way to go, Jeff. You finally found a good question. That's great.
You like that? I had it here somewhere. My desk is a mess, man.
Well, I tell you, I like to, Melissa, thank you for coming on here. But one thing that we want to do, is there, like when you're going through a struggle, or if you're going through, you're worn out or tired, is there a certain quote, a phrase, a verse, or anything that keeps you going that always resonates in your mind when you're doing that or struggling or need inspiration?
In general, it's not something I thought I would have applied to fire, but it's something that I've applied to as a sports person, growing up my whole life playing soccer and so on. And so that is, a champion is always the one that is bent over and drenched in exhaustion when no one else is watching. And I think that applies to your mental life and into fire in general, because everything you do, just because I train outside doesn't mean anyone's watching me. I could go to an empty field and train in full gear and nobody will see me. But it's for those civilians out there that I'm training for and my crew to know that they can rely on me, and then that the county that I serve can rely on me. So I think that applies mentally if you're taking care of yourself. And I think it applies to sports and just the path that you walk in life in general.
Great analogy.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Me too. Hey, Jeff, this podcast comes from some sponsors. Can you tell them where they can see our sponsors at?
Sure. You got to go to World Wide Web, www.burntoutpodcast.org or worldwidepeersupport.org. Burnoutpodcast.org
or worldwidepeersupport.org. Go to one of those if you need some help. And if you want to get a hold of Melissa, go to burnoutpodcast.org and message us, and we'll connect you to Melissa so you can ask her any questions to be on your podcast, or you can ask her what Atlanta, Georgia does for peer support there. Or actually, not Atlanta, Georgia. It's what department?
Dekalb.
There you go.
Dekalb. It's got doesn't it have an L in there somewhere? Dekalb?
Somewhere. It does.
Silence. All right. Good figure.
Well, again, thank you both for coming on here and sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And I'd like to thank everybody for listening in. And just remember, when you go home tonight, shut your phone off and radio off and get some sleep. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Burnout. Burnout is brought to you by the Worldwide Peer Support. You can visit Burnout Podcast at burntoutpodcast.org or visit Worldwide Peer Support at worldwidepeersupport.org. Your hosts for the Burnt Out Podcast are Skip O and Jeff the Old Guy. Produced by Sean P. Neal. A MyPodcast.media production.